Okay. Values. So values, this word values, like what do we value? I went to a training, I'm in this elite forum training, it's part of Infusionsoft's, they have a training for CEOs. And so I did what you guys all do when you go into a course with me, which is say like, holy shit, this is expensive, it better work. And like I wasn't ready for this, but I want what they say they deliver. And I'm not ready. Because we're never ready. And I took the leap, and I've been in this training, and the first thing they taught us, and I actually learned about this before the training as part of their enrollment process, is they teach you the value of values. And so I did that at ICON, the Infusionsoft Tech Conference. I ended up in the leadership track, naturally following desire. I ended up in their CEO leadership track and learned a lot through that very inexpensive ground level, entry level training about how companies identifying their values changed everything, and made everything, basically gathered the Shakti, gathered the source energy in a way that could attract the right people and repel the right people, right? Then we have that raga dvesha again, right? Like attract the right people and repel the right people. So immediately, Alex Biondo, who was at ICON, who I brought to ICON with me, she and I, we didn't go to ICON on Friday morning, and we sat in the hotel restaurant to knock out the values. The beautiful thing about our values is that we already have them. So it's nothing that you're like coming up with, you're just giving voice to. You're just writing it in the tablets, you're carving your tablets. It's not new, it's there, you're just codifying. And so we knocked out a rough draft, and we felt really like, wow, we did it, you know? And then 2 days later, we're like changing a lot and reorganizing. And now, a couple months later, we're getting close, but then I just honestly thought of like 3 more in the last 3 weeks that it's like, we're doing this too, and it's not there, and it's blah, blah, blah. So this worked so much. I went to the training that then taught me how to use the values as the business owner. And then I had this sense a couple weeks ago, I think I've mentioned I have one one-on-one client I work with. It's so funny, I have one client that I work with one-on-one, and she's not in any of the courses. Well, she's been through some, but in any case, I was talking to her, I'm like, you need to write down your family values with your kids. She's got 4 kids. And I'm like, you guys need to figure out what these are so that you can, it's basically a training mechanism. So you can end training, right? It's a lot of training. You can end train yourselves. Who's the jerk that didn't turn off their cell phone? Oh, it's me. Indy wanted to go to Yaya's instead. Well, wouldn't you want to go to Yaya's instead if you had a Yaya? All right, anyway. So end training in anything that we're part of, whether it's just you and you is enough. Whether it's you and your partner and your dog, you and your 3 kids and it doesn't matter. Like whoever is part of your inner core constellation, you have values. Have you named them? Those of you who are here who are running a company that's a personality-based brand, which most of us it is that. What are your values? For Batul running a hotel with her husband and a team, like what are the values, right? Any training program we might lead so that we can train. If we actually have codified the values, what we can do is recruit or hire. If it's a company, you're hiring. If it's enrollment, you're recruiting. Train, and also fire or disengage according to the values. Because if we have different values, it's not going to work. And it's going to manifest in all sorts of different ways. But when we get back to why it's not working, we can always trace it back to a value. And so that's what I wanted to do. It was really funny when, so I told my client to do this, and then obviously I'm like, oh my gosh, we haven't done this. And I knew I wanted to do this at Infusionsoft at the first training. I was like, we need to do this so we can hire and train and fire to the values within our family. I'm like, well, we can't hire and we can't fire, but we can train and we can entrain to the values, and we can learn more about each other's needs and each other's wants, each other's learning curves to the values. So we did this, when was it? It was like, it just happened. It was like either what's today? It was a week ago that I sat down, Winston and Indy. I called a meeting, just like I tell people to do in Body Thrive, call a meeting at a neutral time. Sunday morning is a very neutral time at our household. We like that song, like easy like Sunday morning, right? So that's our vibe on Sunday morning. So we had a meeting, and we talked about what our values are, and we put them down on a piece of paper. I have the paper with art from Indy in front of you, and you'll notice there's things that are crossed off. This is a rough draft, and we will be, Indy and I and Winston at our next meeting, we'll go over them. We'll also prioritize them, like which ones seem to rise to the top and which ones are maybe secondary or tertiary. That'll sort of go down a bit because they may be more complex and not always applicable, whereas the ones at the top are probably always applicable in every situation. And what my guess is too, is that over 6 months of using the values, we will find new ones. There might be like one or two that we just haven't put the right words to that might need to be changed a little bit, et cetera. So it's not set in stone, but it's a work in progress. At some point, what I've heard and what I'm noticing from using them with yoga healers, at some point it does more or less get set in stone. Like you do more or less zone into like, this is it. All right, so we crossed a few out because they were not resonant for all members. Yeah, you can probably tell which person they came from and which person they were not. They're like, no. And then what happened too is as we got further down, we were able to work those in ways that were more resonant. It's very important to co-create these with the people that you're using them with. Like at Yoga Healer, Alex and I took what we had to the team, and we had a meeting. And we just talked about this, and part of it was training and training, and then part of it was like, hey, what else do we do? And just starting to get some buy-in, because the more people are part of the process, they are part of it, and they own it naturally, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to figure out our own values. I know for me, like when I first heard of this, I was like, I'm a know-it-all, so. Is there something I've done before? I'm like, I've done this, right? Or there's also a lot of charge around the term, especially family values. So I think like the Christian right just like ruined that term for a lot of us, because they took their values and they started to call their values family values, right? Which it's like, if those are your values, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they're not everybody's values. And so when we take the word family and values, or you take the word my company values, right? If there's any sort of charge on that, you just kind of want to like let that go and really come up with like, wait, these are mine. And everyone should be different. You'll borrow and you'll steal from each other, but eventually you'll zone in on like, that word's not quite as potent as this other word. And that's the word that really holds the Shakti, the power of the matrika, when the word is the right word. Any questions thus far on values? Are we out? We have some good buy-in now as to doing.
Are you saying entrain or something?
Entrain, E-N-T-R-I-A-N, to entrain. Does anyone have a good definition of entrain? Who's our linguist? Do we have any linguists?
It's like tracking, like your mind going together. Like syncing up your minds. Like if you have brain waves, your brain waves get entrained.
It's like everyone's on the same wavelength. You've probably heard that.
Same
right?
wavelength.
But is there a biochemistry to that? Is that what you're?
Yeah, there is.
Because your heart rates can entrain as well.
Heart rates entrain, like the mama and baby thing. Like that's why, in the old days, like 50 years ago, they used to separate the mom and baby at birth. And it basically was like catastrophic for both of them. It sent both into like shock because they couldn't entrain. They'd been entrained for 9 months. That makes sense. Whose idea was that? Right, so that's part of entrainment. It's also why kids, when they get hurt, they want heart to heart, because they want to entrain, they want to just find the bigger rhythm and entrain. So for many of us, especially if you're some of you are going to do this values exercise for you and your partner, you and your family. Others of you are going to do it for you and your business. When we have values that entrain, it allows everyone to be like, all right, that's what we stand for. So what happens in life is shit happens, right? Stuff comes up. Whether you're running a business or you're the center point of your family or your core point of any group or organization, like it's not always going to be the way you want it to be. And the same is true with other members. Like stuff is going to come up. What happens when stuff comes up? Give me an example of something coming up for you lately. Anyone? Stuff coming up?
Someone breaks a foot.
Okay, someone breaks a foot. So how are we gonna deal with that? Say we have a value around we take care of each other in times of need. Say that's one of our values. Could be a corporate value, could be a family value, could be a personal value. What it does is it then at that next meeting, say we have regular family meetings, we have historically, sporadically, and now we're moving in this next phase to we have to, because there's so much going on. We're building a house, we just have this other building, there's a kid, my mom just had back surgery. I mean, there's just like so many things. Like we need to meet to all know where anyone needs support for the next week and work together, right? So at that family meeting, I would just pull up that value of we take care of each other in times of need. And then what that does is all of a sudden we're like, oh, someone just broke a foot, right? And so instead of, it's just like Heather did last night when the food was like crazy late and we were all sort of like, ah, right? And everyone, like the hangry people got hangry. And I was just like, what do we do? Right? There is no backup plan. Right? And like Driggs on a Friday night at 7 o'clock is going to be busy. And anyway. So it just like brought us back, right? She's like attitude of gratitude. Like that is a value. And it just brought us back to like, oh, right. And then we entrained on the vibration of gratitude. And then we actually celebrated Sue instead of making her feel horrible, which she walked in feeling horrible, right? And then she left like, I'm part of this. We're all good. So it does that, and it reminds people of this is the value that's most important right now. Yeah. Should we use another example, or is that helpful, or are we kind of good to start?
I can use the example that just an employee is not working out.
Okay, great. An employee's not working out. Yeah, let's get into this. So we'll just go over here, and I'll sit on Sandia's lap. So let's talk about this. So what's the situation? If you come up here with me, that'll be easier. Can we have another chair, please? Can you just grab that one, Sarah? Yeah. Sarah's still stoned from her massage with Alex. So, so what's going on?
Well, we have an employee that I'm just starting to sense that he just doesn't have a great attitude. He's a guide. Yep. And, it's a situation where it's not some company where, people kind of come and go, and maybe a 5-minute interaction with somebody kind of grumpy is not such a big deal. People are paying hundreds of dollars to spend the entire day going to Yellowstone, and this one person is like, that person is their conduit to their transformative experience.
What value do you wish he had?
Passion, excitement, a desire to connect. And the thing is, I don't know for sure that he doesn't have these things.
That's fine, but that's what you're sensing you'd
I'm
like more of.
starting to sense that perhaps that's not there.
Okay.
And that the people going on the tours are not, they're getting the short shrift. They're not getting the good guide.
Yeah, that's perfect. Perfect example. So can anyone come up with a value in what you just said? Like put that into a phrase. It could be like a bullet point or a sentence.
Well, you said desire to connect.
Great. So the value might be we have a desire to connect with our clients and serve with passion. How does that feel in your body?
Yeah, that's one of our values. That's one of the things that we train and hire people and talk about that and ask them about their passion.
Great. Okay, great. So
Yeah.
is it written down? Do you have like one of these with your vision and values? Like, is it right there where you're like, it's right there. There it is. What is it? What did she
Have a desire to connect.
We have
Our-
Well, the mission, the
No,
vision
it's
on
a
our...
yes or no answer.
Well, yes.
Okay,
it is.
great.
On our
So
website,
then-
connecting you to the wonders of wild places.
No, not in the website. Like,
Okay, but yes, in the
you have it though. You
Yes.
started. Great.
Yes.
So and most of us have,
in the
will have
employee
done some of this work.
contract, yeah, like this is what
It needs to be, it honestly needs to be an infographic. Even we are going to do this we will have an infographic for our household so that Indy can be like, Mom, I don't feel safe. You'll notice on Indy's, I had to help her with this one, but I'm like, Indy, you don't feel safe. So one of our values now is Indigo always feels safe and knows where we are. The reason she doesn't feel safe is because from a young age, we were always on the property, but she didn't know exactly where. And we're like, if we're not here, we're there. And she couldn't read yet, so we couldn't leave her a note. So we'd put breadcrumbs in the trail out to the ear, into the, and but in any case, she has that. A lot of only children have that feeling of like, I'm the only one. They're gonna touch me. So now she can just be like, you did that, and I didn't feel safe. And what am I gonna do? It's a value. So now I'm like, okay, let's figure out how we can not have this experience in the future so that you always feel safe. So we'll, unpack it, et cetera. So that's what you want to do is just make sure it's fully resonant, that you hire it, you attract only people that are that, and you might find too, if you're attracting people that aren't as passionate or don't have the inner connectivity, personal development skills at the level you're looking for, that either you set up a training program to train to that for people that can. We do that Yoga Healer. A lot of the VAs come in and they're just like, I just want to, I love what you guys do, but they don't have some of the values. So we help them if they have the potential to start to live into the value. But others, you might just be like, forget it. I'm not going to deal with. I'm only going to attract people that are already at a certain level. So you can do either, depending on the job market and a number of other factors. Does that help?
It does, yeah. So, I mean, at this point, trying to train to see if that is a skill.
Great.
Well, it's not so much. I mean, part of it is a skill. I mean, a lot of it is sort of this internal thing, but you can have a first experience with someone and think that that's there, and then the reality of the job is that it's really tough. It's a long day, and you're dealing with people, and so even someone that kind of has that inside might not be able to do it. So, what are your ideas for
So then you
setting
want
up
to
a
get
training?
really specific. So say Indy was like, I came home from school and no one was in the house, and you didn't tell me to go to the shop. Now I can correct my behavior and make sure before she goes to school, she knows where people will be when she comes home, right? And that way she's the boss of that one, and I'm like, okay, I'll do everything I can possible to make that happen. In this case, you're the boss, and so you have to say, specifically, Mr. Smith needed a granola bar, and he didn't get one, and you were the guide on that trip, and you need to anticipate needs ahead. Maybe that's another one. We anticipate people's needs ahead of time. My guess is that would be big in your business, because it's for some people it's really outside of their box. And for them to stay hydrated and sun protection and fueled and all that is like, we want it, and maybe that's a value. And so you could just look then to your values, and if some of them are not as explicit, you make your infographic, you make it explicit, and then when anything goes wrong at yogahealer.com, we just like, which one? Oh, there it is. And then we talk about it, and we break it down, and then we talk about what the next behavior is. So for instance, getting ready for this retreat, we had so many little things that I'm like, really, you guys? Don't make me be a micromanager, because I can't be a micromanager and a CEO at the same time. Can't, no longer. That was the old thing. So then I go to We Learn, Master, Record, Share, Mentor. So there were things that dropped between the recording and then the mentoring the next person that took over that. So it's very clear to point to that, and people are like, oh, right. And then we rebuild the relationship, the system, the value, and we train to how that needs to happen for the next retreat. So the next retreat I should have, like, on the pre-planning phase, I would say 60% less involvement with, which will free up, which will actually create a lot more potency for the event itself, right? Because then my focus will be on what we're doing together instead of logistics.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
I think it's really helpful, and I think the infographic is helpful because, you know, you can talk about this, and, you know, even in the employee agreement it says, like, this is, you know, this is the vision and this is what we're looking for, but to be able to have accountability and say, all right, you know, let's get together, and this is not his name, but Joe, so, you know, let's, you know, how is this last month going? You know, with, you know, these values that we had talked about in the training, we've kind of got them set out. And, you know, this is kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah.
You know, you're calling in at the end of the day and you seem really crabby. Like,
Right,
you don't
right.
seem psyched. Our other guys are
Right.
calling in and they're like, oh, we saw this and we saw this and the people are so great. And I've got a concern that,
Yeah.
you know, that you're not meeting this, like, passionate and excited about being with people and connecting with people.
Great.
You know, have something to,
Right. And so then there's
Yeah.
there's training in that too, because what you might then find is that he might need to do a centering practice before he calls in, so that the vibration that he's connecting with you is also at the higher vibrational level. And it might just be that you may have a value, like one of ours is we communicate with candor and care. Care is a really big part of this organization. And maybe it's something like that when he's communicating with you, regardless of the client experience, but when he's communicating with you, he's also communicating on that level, on the value level that you want to be communicated with.
right.
And so then there might be training, like, okay, like we have in our meeting rhythm now, we have positive focus. Sometimes it's 15 seconds each, popcorn style, 15 seconds. What's your positive focus for the day, this meeting? It can be anything in life. My dog had puppies, great, next, you know. And then we do a mindful breath. You could do it for a minute, a mindful minute of just recharge. It could be a recharge minute. Maybe he's depleted and needs to get recharged. You could also have, I mean, one of the things that in ours, so there's an edit on this one. It'll be corrected, but it wasn't corrected before. Is on the smoothie one, we live on brand. That just cross out on brand and write the habits. So we live the habits. So everyone that's part of Yoga Healer is trained in Body Thrive. They all go through Body Thrive now. And they can be in any Body Thrive group, inevitably, so that they get strong in themselves. And that's what you might find. Like maybe he's drinking a 6-pack after work or smoking pot after work or doing something that's lowering his vibrational field. And maybe at some point you want, I mean, that's really common in the guide industry, whatever, but like, I mean, there's one thing, like there could be drug testing, or on the other side, there could be coaching, health coaching that goes with it, because maybe that is part of the vibration. And it might be the whole, like, you know, there's like your company 1.0 and then there's your company 2.0. So what this does is it starts to really codify, like, oh, this is who we were because we didn't take the time to really hammer this out. But if we look at our best employees ever, and we just start to attract that, this is what we find they're all doing. And then that's maybe 2.0, and maybe there's special training programs that they go through to actually magnify and amplify those values.
I think too, it's really helpful. Like I find that I want to follow the values more because I feel valued.
Oh yeah.
Like and that was a big contrast that came up in my job and working with Cate. Was like, yes, we had the values, but I felt valued. I wanted to follow the values, and even in those times where like maybe I wasn't doing, I needed to improve, but I was hearing like you're doing a really great job at this, and that was like, yes.
Right.
I want to do that more.
Right.
Like it just totally, and I never got that at my other job. So that was like a huge contrast where
Right.
I was like, I want to go to where I feel valued and appreciated. And so maybe this person might not feel valued or doesn't know how to ask, or I find that with my husband too, right? He just wants me to be like, good job. You did a good job, but he doesn't know how to ask.
Yeah. I mean, and some people, there are companies, I'm working with a lot of companies that have these values now. It's like we celebrate the wins. that's another one that's really important, because a lot of times when companies are really just like forward moving and you guys are crazy busy in the summer, there's so much going on that we forget to celebrate the wins. Maybe someone had an amazing breakthrough on one of their trips and you guys just like stop, however you do it. I try to do it every Friday now. I send out a ping. We use Basecamp and I use the ping function and I just celebrate the wins that I saw. And I try to really just name like the biggest things that happen, but make sure that it's different people every week so that everyone gets that. Yeah.
Oh, I just had a thought along the lines too.
I think we should do this. Yeah.
Okay. My first job out of college, I worked for a major retailer, Neiman Marcus, and when I went through their executive training, they had these their values and these videos that we watched, and it was kind of shocking as a new employee to watch, because one of the values was the customer is always right, always. They would show people returning shoes that had been worn out and wanting a full refund. And Neiman Marcus's policy is the customer's always right. So maybe with this person, if there's the clarity that, sometimes you really just have to make the shift that we are in a customer serving business.
Oh yeah, there might be another value is what you're pointing to.
Yeah.
Maybe a value that you haven't quite either named yet or trained to yet. And then that's where.
And I think the separation is, it's like you don't have to agree with the customer, but when this is the policy that, we're in a business that values the customer in any case, then that might just allow him to separate from these people were hard today. If he just can kind of step into, these are the customers. Right. This is what we're delivering, and it might give enough separation to be able to just have that clarity, about what his role is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's a great example of paying attention to the behavior that's happening, and kind of take a look at what value that would describe. Because what you just said right there, the very first tour that he came back on, he called in, his first comment was, yes, this tour met my expectations. What do you mean met your expectations?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be meeting other people's expectations. You're supposed to be like, these people, we had such a great day.
It's not about you.
It's not about you. And I remember sort of laughing like, well, I'm glad that your expectations were met, but were the customer's expectations met? And I didn't say that, so thank you for that. Because I could have made that connection there.
Yeah. Just come sit up here. Yeah, just hold on just a sec. So, in general, your issues should point to your values. So you want to use your issues to uncover your values. So even if you look in like the past year, what have I had issues with myself with? Like we had a great workshop yesterday with Beth, and thanks everyone for helping with the shiny objects last night. With the idea of like, say you have a value in yourself that you have accountability with your time to meet your highest needs and goals, say that's one of your values, then when you're not doing that, right, you can actually use that issue and point to the value in yourself to get more integrity. Yeah, Batul, let me give you the...
Going off on Candace, in the customer service industry, you always have to make the customer come first. So we had that policy of yes, I can. So whatever the customer wanted, you always said, yes, I can. And that's where you get now with social media right there, and you want those 5 stars and everything you do. I think that's priority.
Yeah. Well, and there's a good book actually. There's a good book on this that's controversial in that area, and I don't want this to go totally company. You are excused. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I just want to say, we could bring it back in a way that, like, the customer, it's not one person over the other. Like in nonviolent communication, you give yourself compassion.
Yeah.
It sounds like this employee is not giving himself compassion, or however he experiences that. And then you're not able to give the customers compassion because, they want a granola bar, or God, I just asked them for water and then they asked for this, because people are hard to deal with. So compassion,
Right.
I feel like compassion
That might be part of it.
It's a little different than, what was the other word they used? That It was, or connecting. Connecting is a little different than compassion, because I can imagine you're getting irritated with people in customer service, you know, especially in the tours. So
Right.
daily, the same thing happens over and over.
Right. I mean, and I think what all this just points to is that there's ways that we need to articulate and really codify, like make into a code, right? Like that which makes everything work better. And when something's not working, we use that in particular to create the code from, right? And so, and it doesn't mean, and yours might not, like, you'll see on ours, there's no the customer is always right. There's co-create with the tribe, but it's not our value. Because we actually just want to attract the people who are natural fit, and we don't want to bend over backwards for people that are going to take 80% of the energy away from where this tribe seems to want to go fast and furiously, you know, and deeply and connectively and lovingly. So if it's not a fit, it's just not a fit. So that, you know what I mean? So you want to make sure that the values are yours and really work for the kind of experience that your business is in business for. Yeah. Okay, you guys, I think we need to go on. I know, it's like so juicy. I wish this is like a good 2-hour workshop that we're cramming in to an hour. So can you hold that? And we'll look for, or is it really?
I'll give her my own private.
Oh yeah, good. Okay, great.
Because I'm faced with that situation.
Yeah, well, but again, you guys, we don't have to give Margaret any advice, because all she has to do is really get clear, she and her husband, and maybe there's some other key players. The more of key players you have involved, like I didn't write down the values and give them to my husband and daughter and say, like, here's our family values. Now we're going to have meetings and train to these. Because they would have been like, Winston's was we get exercise daily. That wasn't mine. But we bring healthy food into our home. Like they would have been like, later, Mom. Right? Because like, where would the marshmallows go? And then there's a bonfire, and we don't have marshmallows, right? So I learned that that's not one of our family values. But then we came up with that we take care of ourselves and our stuff in body, mind, and spirit. And we're responsible for caring for each other in body, mind, and spirit. So those came down at the end of the conversation, and they pulled together a lot of those so we didn't have to. So then we could put a big X through mom's healthy food. So that's what you would want to do, is you'd want to bring together as many of the people that are already demonstrating the values, and they don't have to be codified to know that people are demonstrating. There's just resonance. It's just like, yeah, I want you here in this meeting. I want you to say what your values are because I like them, right? So maybe there's a guide that's been with you for 10 years. They would be in the values meeting, and you guys would go through this, and you would come up too with the icons. We have icons. So these women were originally men, which